Good evening, you're watching To The Point. I'm Preeti Chaudhary. So what's really happened is that the Jallianwala Bagh memorial site has been completely revamped with a cost of 20 crores. It was overseen by the Culture Ministry. Now this happened, the unveiling happened on the 28th of August. Subsequently, historians have been tweeting out pictures at the back of which there's massive outrage, cultural and political. Why? Find out here. April 13th, 1919, a monstrous, sinister day. General Dyer marched with his troops through this narrow passageway in Amritsar and massacred a gathering of over 1,000 Indians, peacefully celebrating Baisakhi. No one could escape. Dyer and his men blocked this only exit, this narrow alley. Over 100 years on, the Jallianwala Bagh has been a constant reminder of our blood that was made to flow like water. Many additions were made to commemorate this memorial. Renovations were done, but what was kept to its true form, untouched, as real as it was on the 13th April 1919, was this bullet-riddled wall and this passageway, this alley. For those of us who have walked through this alley, that deathly spine-chilling feeling of helplessness, a writ on these walls. But now, the history recorded by these walls have been given a fresh coat of paint. This passageway, after 100 years, has now been renovated. New shiny floors paved over the grey-beaten path. The fading pink walls are now tinged over with gold and murals. A brand new shiny gallery without a trace of the old alley. The renovation was done last year, overseen by the Ministry of Culture, by the then Minister Prahlad Patel. The renovated look was unveiled on the 28th August of this year in a sound and light show. Before and after photos of this lane were then shared by historian Kim Wagner, who has chronicled the 10-minute Jallianwala Bagh massacre. He called the revamp a bid to erase history, or the Disneyfication of Indian history. The shiny new revamp has many outraged. A complete break from our past, our roots, our tragedies.
उनका समय था, उनको करने का अवसर था, उन्होंने जो नहीं किया वो हम सब कर रहे हैं, जिससे उनको तकलीफ हो रही है। राहुल गांधी लड़े हैं क्या? राहुल गांधी क्यों प्रधानमंत्री बनना चाहते हैं? राहुल गांधी ने कौन सा स्वतंत्रता आंदोलन देखा है? सोनिया गांधी ने कौन सा स्वतंत्रता का आंदोलन में भाग लिया है?
केवल दिखावा करने में ये सरकार विश्वास रखती है, इतिहास को मिटाने में, इतिहास को बदलने में ये सरकार विश्वास रखती है। और यही आपने देखा कि चाहे नेहरू जी हों या हमारी आज़ादी की लड़ाई हो, हर एक चीज़ पर अब ये लिपापोती करके शायद ये कहीं ये भी दिखाना चाहेंगे कि कांग्रेस का आंदोलन नहीं था, बल्कि आरएसएस ने आज़ादी दिलवाई होगी।
What is interesting to note, while Rahul Gandhi criticized the revamp, Punjab Chief Minister Captain Amarinder Singh has supported it.
I don't know what has been removed, लेकिन जो मैंने देखा है उस रात को जब प्राइम मिनिस्टर मैं भी उस रात को बोला था, to me it looked very nice. You know, 100 years, 102 years have passed. 102 years में कहीं टेढ़े आ जाती हैं, कुछ हो जाता है, तो it looks very nice.
Away from the politics, should future generations of this country have been allowed to experience the dark, diabolical event in our history, as true, as real to what it was. Across the world, memorial Holocaust sites are painstakingly preserved to their true form. Be it Auschwitz, or where students were massacred at the Tiananmen Square, preserved as close to what it was. Least people forget. Our future generations will now stare at this instead of knowing what it was. Pink, pale, sinister, recording the death of our people. Bureau Report, India Today. All right, joining me right now from London is Kim Wagner. He's a historian. He's written a book on Amritsar where he's chronicled the 10 minutes of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. He was the one to quickly retweet and in fact tweet out the image that you see on your television screen on what the alley looked previously, what it looks now. There's been another change. The bullet-riddled wall which was there now is also partially covered. He's joining us live. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. My first question, sir. What is the biggest red flags for you in this renovation?
I think it's not a very successful one, and I think the authenticity of the place has clearly not been the priority behind the design of this, really turning it into a kind of amusement park almost.
You call it an amusement park, you've called it the Disneyfication of India's history. You've chronicled that 10 minute there in a book as well. But Mr. Wagner, you know, I want you to elaborate further to give a larger perspective. Internationally, if one looks at memorial sites, they've been pretty much preserved to the true essence or as close to what it was originally, be it the Auschwitz camp, be it the Tiananmen Square. There is an attempt to pretty much recreate the atmosphere which was there at that time of tragedy.
Well, I think quite clear this is a quite important site, not just in Indian history, but in global history, really. And obviously, it has to be preserved. Perhaps it's too optimistic to expect a place like Jallianwala Bagh to be returned to its original state. But I think every effort should have been made to really preserve and conserve the very, very few remains that are, which we're talking about the original entrance, we're talking about the Samadhi, the small temple, we're talking about the well, and the pieces of the original wall with bullet holes. But in this revamping that's just taken place, the entrance has gone. So that's 25% of the original site, which has effectively been erased for no apparent purpose, as far as I can tell.
Mr. Wagner, I'll ask you one final question before I let you go. Why is it so important in the historical context, you are a historian, to preserve sites of memorial tragedies to as near original as possible?
Well, as I just said, it's not always possible to do so, especially not a century on. But I think it is extremely important to look after these sites and not, in a sense, try to overly politicize them. Of course, historical memorials are by definition political, but I think it's also quite evident that in this instance, you see Modi and the BJP effectively trying to overwrite the original monument, which had been established in 1961, opened by then Prime Minister Nehru under a Congress government. So really, what we see here is Jallianwala Bagh is sort of reduced to a tool of Indian politics in 2021, which then also means that the commemoration of the victims of the massacre in 1919 are, you know, they're not foremost of the agenda.
All right, Mr. Wagner, appreciate you joining us from London. Thank you there. I want to cut across to our political panel right now. There's been a political fallback as well. Supriya Shrinate, spokesperson Congress, Guru Prakash Paswan, spokesperson Bharatiya Janata Party. Mr. Paswan, I just, you know, it's not about whether, you know, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. It might be beautiful to you, it might not be beautiful to, say, Ms. Shrinate. But having said that, there should be only one context to history, is what most historians say, to cover up the passageway when most of us have walked and actually seen the eeriness of it come to you. You know, to cover the wall, which was bullet-riddled, you know, partially as well. Was it all needed, is the question.
I think the Chief Minister of Punjab, Captain Amarinder Singh, has said that it was required. The people of India have welcomed it. And Preeti, who gets to decide who is a martyr? The problem is that the Congress party and their sponsored historians, they have perpetuated this lie that only because of the sacrifices of one family, the country got independence. But you know what the real problem is, Preeti? Before 2019, it was a requirement by law that the president of the Congress party would be a de facto member of the Jallianwala Bagh Memorial Trust. So this is what has irked the Congress party, because an amendment was brought last year to include the Prime Minister and also the leader of the opposition. If not the leader of opposition, then the leader of the single largest party in the opposition. So the institution has become more democratic. Mr. Rahul Gandhi, or for that matter, Congress party, has no locus standi, has no moral authority to comment on it. Now let us look at what has actually happened there. 4 new galleries using some underutilized buildings have been erected to depict the history of Punjab, the history of freedom movement, the Gadar movement. The Smarak has been restored with some basic facilities such as ticketing counters, drinking water, and this is something very preposterous. Who is actually responsible for the independence of our country? The people of India deserve to know that. And it's very important because Shaheeds like Shaheed Bhagat Singh, Shaheed Udham Singh, as the present generation, as the young generation of this country, I think I must know and pay my solace to the contribution, the supreme sacrifices that was made by them. So politicizing this issue, it smirks of a political propaganda, a political design by the Congress party. But the real problem that the Congress party has is the removal of the president of the Congress party as a permanent member of the
Mr.
trust.
Paswan, I'm going to keep this political. The second question I'll ask you is, because it's not political, it's cultural as well. A lot of people up in arms on saying that our kids are not going to actually see history. I'll come back to that. But let's keep it political. Let's cut across to Supriya Shrinate right now. Ms. Shrinate, the actual problem or the grouse of the Congress, as per the BJP, is that the Congress chief was removed from the committee, and that is what the Congress is peeved about.
That is a silly, completely misplaced, a stupid, arrogant response to what they have done. And I will tell you why I say that. I say that because this decision was taken in 2019. If we had to object to this, we would have objected then. The reality is that this is a very somber, serious place. This is a place where thousands of Indians unarmed were brutally killed by General Dyer. Why is it that this history needs to be preserved? History cannot be changed overnight by having a grand mural and a lotus pond. What are you trying to conceal? That's all that I'm trying to say. The Prime Minister moves from one event to the other. This is not about event management, Preeti, and I'm a student of history, and which is why this is a subject extremely close to my heart. I've been there multiple times. I still remember the first time I went there, I had goosebumps all over, and that needed to be preserved because that should be a reminder to what foreign powers can do to us as if we are subjugated. That's a reminder to the supreme sacrifices. You know, why do we need to cover everything in a glossy, why does history need to be full of gloss? History was painful. People need to understand what our freedom fighters went through. That's one thing. And the second thing that I would definitely want to say is, this is a somber, serious place. We are denying it the simplicity by putting a lights show, a sound and light show. Is this celebration? Is this mourning? I really want to understand. And all of this happening at the behest of the central government. Do they not understand the seriousness of this? Mr. Modi, I know, wants to be a part of history. Do something big which will make you a part of history. By disproportionately changing history, you are not going to become a part of history. This is, you may not have had a role to play in the freedom struggle, I understand. And this is your desperation to do so. And is that what is leading you to do it? Please do not distort our history. Look at Hiroshima, look at Tiananmen Square, look at Auschwitz. They're all preserved to remind the population of what people went through. That is a part of their history. Why are we in a desperate hurry to annul history? And this is not about the Congress party. The reality is that you removed the picture of Pandit Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, who spent 9 years in jail. The reality is you're trying to change India's history. Okay. This is not going to serve our purpose. Okay. There's a very glorified history that we come with.
Okay. Mr. Paswan, let's take away the Congress. Let's take away, the Gandhi family. Let's take away the Gandhi trying to become martyrs. I want to ask you one question, Mr. Paswan. Let's just talk about the cultural, historic context of it all. It's not just politics. There have been historians, there are people outraged as well. You tell me, sir, tomorrow your children walk down the pathway or that alley, instead of seeing those jaded pink walls, which were, reminded you 100 years of what happened, you're suddenly seeing these glitzy golden walls. Across the world internationally, whether it is the Auschwitz camp, whether is it memorial sites of the Tiananmen Square, everything is tried to be preserved into its true original form. Why are we trying to recreate something when we already have something?
Preeti, there is a difference between recreating something and restoring something. The usage of the word glitzy, glittery, it has only been used by the Congress party. And when the sitting Chief Minister of Punjab...
No, sir, historians as well, a lot of people as well. Let's not give it... I'm saying let's keep away from politics. Let's keep away from... Yes, I'll admit Captain Amarinder Singh says he really likes what it was. Rahul Gandhi said he didn't like it. Keep that away. Let's talk about the people of this country. Shouldn't your children deserve to walk down the alley which was preserved to its original form, or walk down a gallery which is gold in color?
Preeti, I hope you extend the same courtesy to me that you extended to Ms. Sheenet from the Congress party by not objecting her even once.
Sure.
If I can please complete my sentence, Preeti. So that if the Honorable Chief Minister of Punjab is saying something, it is significant. The usage of the words glittery, it was used by the Congress party. The problem is, Preeti, that there are many unsung heroes. You tell me something.
Ma'am, let him finish.
Are you aware, Preeti, are you aware of Rani Jhalkari Bai? Are you aware of that Sardar Udham Singh was a Dalit? And deliberately, because of this elitist mindset of the Congress party, the contribution of Dalit freedom fighters like Sardar Udham Singh has been removed. Now, if there is an effort, there is an initiative to remember the contribution of Sardar Udham Singh, who comes from a Dalit community, because in your quest to perpetuate the legacy of one single family, the problem with the thinking of the Congress party is that they want to treat the entire country as an extension of 10 Janpad.
Please come in.
The country is not an extension of 10 Janpad. The country is not an extension of 10 Janpad, and the party is pained. The party is pained to see that the president of the Congress party is no longer the member of the trust of Jallianwala Bagh.
All right, okay. Now you talk about Captain Amarinder. Yes, but you talk about Captain Amarinder Singh. Words should be taken seriously. He's asking farm laws to be repealed, so that's also selective. But having said that, Supriya Shrinate,
if I can respond to it.
Okay. Supriya Shrinate, I want to come to you. The fact is, it is the Congress party who wants to make it about one family, an extension of 10 Janpath. Therefore, all of this is drawn into the martyrdom of one family.
So you believe every Indian who's protesting against this, you believe every historian, and a very eminent historian, Kim Wagner, was on your show right now. They're all stooges of the Congress. They're all doing this because of the Congress. No, sir. What you do not realize is that we carry our Indianness within ourselves. There are Indians who are outraged with this. This is not about the Congress. This isn't about the BJP. This is your desperate attempt, sir, to change history. History is created. We learn lessons from history. We must preserve our history. We must never try and change it. Because when you try and change history, you deny the martyrs their due. What happened in Jallianwala Bagh is a lesson that every Indian, I wish my children can, and they've been there thankfully. I wish their coming generation goes and sees what happens. But what they're going to see is a glorified mural with a lotus pond with gold gilded statues. That's not what I want them to see. I want them to see what Indians went through to attain the freedom and liberty, which is so important. और बड़ी आपको आज भगत सिंह की याद आ रही है. भगत सिंह को सीने पे लिए किसानों का सर फोड़ रहा है जब करनाल में, तब याद नहीं आ रहा है.
10 seconds, Mr. Prakash, and I'd like to
कर रहे हैं. वो फार्मर्स की बात कर रहे हैं, तब आपको वो याद नहीं आ रहे हैं कि किसानों को कैसे दौड़ा के मार रहे हैं.
10 seconds, sir, and I want to wrap.
शर्म नहीं आ रही है.
Okay. 10 seconds, please respond.
Let her speak.
No, please, I'm not giving you equal time. I've kept a timer because all of you complain. One gets exact time, sir. 10 seconds you have.
This is the sheer arrogance of the Congress party. It is the people of India, ma'am. It is the people of India, 135 crore people of India whose aspirations are reflected in the Parliament of India. It is not the BJP government. It is the government of the people of India. Now you're
I am asking you a question.
You show your sanskar. You show your sanskar again. Show your
sanskar again. Appreciate you both for joining us. I'm going to bow out. We're going to leave it for our viewers to decide. Let's keep the politics out of it. You're watching the show. You're out there. You know the changes that have been made to the Jallianwala Bagh Memorial site. Do you agree or do you not agree? We leave it up to you. A quick break to stay with us. Up next is Rahul Gandhi.